Hello everyone, this is Tholin. It's been a while since my last upload, but now we are back with a new series of videos. As you may have noticed from my previous uploads, I am a big fan of two things when it comes to gaming. The first is Nintendo, and the second is those old school point-and-click adventure games. Now, I have been playing those types of games since the early 90s, during their heyday back then, and especially on the PC. During the last few years, there has been a rebirth of the genre, as there are a lot of old titles that are being re-released for newer platforms, some of them remade, and also we notice a big number of new releases of new titles being developed both by traditional studios and by a lot of indie developers. So in this new series of videos, we are going to focus on the point-and-click adventure games that you can play on your Nintendo Switch. So this is going to be a series of videos, as there are a lot of titles that are available on the Nintendo Switch. But before we start, we need to set some rules in order for you to understand what we are going to cover in the following videos. First of all, the game must be available on the Nintendo Switch, obviously. Secondly, it has to be a point-and-click adventure game, a typical point-and-click adventure game like those back in the day. So no visual novels, no match-3 games with a bit of puzzle and story, no hidden object games. There are a lot of such titles that you can find on the Switch, but those are not relevant for this series of videos. And third and lastly, we are going to treat series of games like game number 1, 2, 3 in the same series as one suggestion. I have to mention before we start that every game that you are going to see in this video and in the follow-up videos are not just suggestions by me that I have read somewhere. All those games have been played by me, I have completed them, and so I can speak with a bit of experience for each one, what to expect, what are the pros and cons of each title or each series. So enough with the introduction, let's start with our first game. We will begin with a series of adventure games, and those are Deponia. Those games were developed by Daedalic Entertainment, a German developer, and they began in 2012 with the first Deponia game, up until 2016 when the fourth and last game, Deponia Doomsday, was released. All those 4 games became available for the Switch in 2019. In the Deponia games, you play the role of the series protagonist Rufus, an inhabitant of the adjunct planet Deponia, as he attempts to seek a new life on the floating city of Elysium. However, he will soon realize that he is part of a bigger plot, as he now has to help an Elysian citizen return to her home, and he also uncovers a plot that threatens his home planet, Deponia. Now, like most forms of graphic adventure games, players take the role of a character who must solve a variety of puzzles. Objects in the game can be manipulated or picked up to be used to overcome obstacles or combine them with other objects in the inventory in order to proceed. There is a lot of humor across all 4 games of Deponia, as the developers stated that their true inspiration was the Monkey Island series. Now, don't get me wrong, this game is not that good. You cannot compare it to the Monkey Island series, but it is a nice adventure game, a nice point-and-click adventure game with a lot of humor and a nice story. However, there are a lot of drawbacks on this series of games. First of all, its whole post-apocalyptic setting, it can pose sometimes as an obstacle for the plot development and the evolution of its puzzles. You will have to interact with a lot of items that you do not understand what they are. They have a general and broad description, and you do not know what they are used for. So the overall logic of combining those objects with other objects in your inventory or using them on the environment can be a bit troublesome sometimes. The protagonist, Rufus, is a pure, let's say, a copy of, wants to be a pure copy of Guybrush Threepwood, but he's missing his overall humor and wits, let's say, in some cases. He can become a bit of a nuisance from time to time. He can become a jerk, to be honest, and there are a lot of cases in those games that they are a bit of controversial. You will find out when you play them what the baby dolphins puzzle means. You will see when you play it, that it has its own bit of controversy. If you overcome that and you can accept a huge number of toilet humor, a huge number of adult-oriented themes in the game, you can enjoy it. It has a lot of story, a big and deep world to explore, as it is set across 4 different games, and overall it is a good point-and-click adventure game that you can spend your time on the Switch. The graphics are great, they are all hand-drawn. All 4 games are fully voiced. You will have tons of dialogues that you can enjoy across all 4 games, and all those dialogues are voiced. But to sum up, to me, the Deponia series seems like a missed opportunity. It could have been amazing seeing all those graphics, all those available options and puzzles that they put in their game, but it misses this old school spirit and the overall likeness, let's say, of the character. You may love him or you may hate him, and in the latter case, this is not good for an adventure game. Now, as I have already mentioned, the Deponia series is available since 2019 for the Nintendo Switch. You may find the first game or a couple of the games as standalone physical releases for the Switch. There is also a collection of all 4 games, but those were released as a limited edition, let's say, by Super Rare Games. They are not available anymore on their website. You can find them only on eBay, and they fetch quite a huge, big price, let's say. They also have a collector's edition that it was released again by Super Rare Games, and it has a lot of extras, which is nice. But other than that, you can usually find them on discount on the Nintendo Switch eShop, where you can buy them and download them, and I suggest you give them a try. It's a nice series of point-and-click adventure games, especially if you like something that is fully voiced and it's all hand-drawn. Our next game was again developed by Daedalic Entertainment, and it is the second part in their Whispered World series. It's called Silence. Silence was released in 2016 and later on ported to the Nintendo Switch. However, as we have already mentioned, this is a direct sequel to the first game, which is called The Whispered World. Unfortunately, The Whispered World is not available for the Nintendo Switch, so if you want to enjoy this series, you will have to play the first game on another platform, most probably on the PC, and then move on to Silence, because these 2 games have an amazing story. The characters are lovable, and especially Silence, the game we are talking about, has amazing graphics. The whole visual direction of this game is great. It has excellent hand-drawn graphics and excellent animation, and here you can see the actual introduction of the game, but later on, when you play, it has the same graphics across. The puzzles are a bit easy, the interface is quite simple. You just have to select a couple of objects that you may have in your inventory and how to interact with the overall environment. The whole concept of Silence is to guide you through its amazing story. It's a story about 2 orphans that have an imaginary friend, let's say, and mainly it's about this guy who is the big brother who has to protect his youngest sister as they become orphans in a world that is being ravaged by war. Rennie, the young girl that you see here, along with her brother Noah, are actually trapped in a world between life and death, and they have to traverse this world and solve a lot of puzzles in order to progress and progress the plot of the game. Now, as already mentioned, it's a typical point-and-click game with excellent graphics. It's a bit small in duration, it's a bit less than 6 hours, but it is a magical journey through a uniquely depicted world with a lot of heartfelt moments, and I suggest you try it, especially on the big screen in order to enjoy its amazing visuals. It's also available as a physical release. It was released for the Switch quite a bit of time ago, but you can still find it, and you can always find it on the Nintendo eShop. It's constantly on a discount, and you can download and enjoy it. Moving on, we have a game developed by the legendary Revolution Software, a UK-based studio, which is actually the 5th installment in a unique and recognizable point-and-click adventure game series. I'm talking, of course, about Broken Sword 5, the 5th installment in the Broken Sword series. Broken Sword 5, The Serpent's Curse, is a game that was made possible after a successful Kickstarter campaign and was developed by Revolution Software, as already mentioned, which is the studio behind all the previous Broken Sword games. Now, the key figure in those series of games is, of course, Charles Cecil, the head of Revolution Software, who is also involved in the creation of Broken Sword 5. This is a typical 2D adventure game played from a third-person perspective using a point-and-click interface. The players guide the two protagonists, George Stobart and Nicole Goddard, two familiar figures to all fans of the Broken Sword series, in a new adventure that begins in Paris, but it will take them to other European locations, as it is usually done in all Broken Sword games. One of the new gameplay elements in the game will be the manipulation and combination of knowledge between the two protagonists, as the player will have to connect threads of knowledge in order to draw logical conclusions. The death of the protagonist is possible in this game, but when it occurs, you will restart from the moment before the actual death, so you will have to correct your actions. The player can also choose between the classic and modern inventory, the former being in the fashion of the old school Broken Sword games, and the latter in the fashion of the 2009 and 2010 Broken Sword remakes. This is an iconic series of point-and-click adventure games that began back in the 90s, and the 5th installment stands up excellently to fulfill the legacy of the Broken Swords. The graphics are amazing, it is a very nice story, it will remind you a lot of the Da Vinci Code books and movies. It has those old lost knowledge theme behind it, and it is also so far the last Broken Sword game that we have seen. Hopefully there will be a new one in the future. It was developed using Revolution Software's in-house engine called Virtual Theater on its 7th version of an engine, and it combines the 2D backgrounds with a bit of 3D character models. Of course, it is fully voiced, and you can find it on the Nintendo Switch eShop and also as a physical release that you can buy and keep in your collection. If you are a fan of the Broken Sword series, please play this game. If you haven't, then I suggest you begin with the older games in other platforms, as unfortunately they are not available for the Nintendo Switch, and then move on to Broken Sword 5: The Serpent's Curse. Our next game was also developed by Revolution, and it is also a sequel to an iconic point-and-click adventure game of the 90s. We are talking, of course, about Beyond a Steel Sky, which is a sequel to the 1994 Beneath a Steel Sky point-and-click adventure game. That 1994 adventure game was the result of the collaboration of Charles Cecil, the head of Revolution Software, and Dave Gibbons, an iconic English comics artist and writer who had collaborated also with Alan Moore for the creation of the Watchmen series. Now, Beneath a Steel Sky was a post-apocalyptic adventure game, a point-and-click adventure game, where you had to guide the protagonist, who was living in a wasteland, actually, when he had to visit a mega city and uncover a plot to destroy mankind and replace them with androids. Now, in the new game, in Beyond a Steel Sky, you will have to play the same protagonist on his return to the same mega city called Union City after the kidnap of one of his friend's children. For the development of this title, Revolution Software had moved away from its own in-house built a video game engine called the Virtual Theater, and they utilized the famous Unreal Engine, and you can see the results on screen. The visuals are amazing. It is a totally new 3D environment and 3D character models with great animation, and of course it is fully voiced. Now, the plot follows the same protagonist as he has to revisit that Union City that we saw in the previous game, and it is full of references to the first one. So I suggest that if you want to enjoy this game, if you want to enjoy Beyond a Steel Sky, then you need to play or replay the first game, which is Beneath a Steel Sky. Unfortunately, again, the first game is not available for the Switch at the time of the creation of this video, so you will have to play it on another platform. Other than that, the game is full of references to the first game, a lot of returning characters, one major return to this game, and it is heavily based on one type of puzzles in particular, where you have to hack into the new operating system that controls the whole city. It has a lot of dialogue and a lot of cinematics and a lot of fully voiced text. It is amazingly made, and it also had a great collector's edition that came out with the release of the game for the Switch. It has a lot of extras, and it is a bit pricey, but you can still find it on most retailers right now. I believe it will be a highly collectible item in the future, and I suggest you give it a shot. Other than that, please enjoy and play this game, because if you are a fan of the original point-and-click adventure games, then Revolution Software and Charles Cecil are key figures to the genre, and the return to a typical setting and a loved franchise like the Beneath a Steel Sky is something that every fan should enjoy. We've talked about industry key figures, now let's talk about legends, and you are going to understand what I'm talking about as we move on to our fifth and final game in this video series. I'm talking, of course, about Thimbleweed Park, a game developed by the two legends of the industry, Ron Gilbert and Gary Winnick. Now, if you haven't heard of those two names, then you haven't probably played any adventure games in the 90s. Ron Gilbert and Gary Winnick are the people behind the creation of the original Monkey Island series. Now, they have created Thimbleweed Park after a successful Kickstarter campaign, and it was released in a multiple number of platforms and, of course, on the Nintendo Switch. FBI agents Ray and Reyes arrive at the town of Thimbleweed Park to investigate a murder. Their investigation leads them to several other persons of interest, like Chuck, who is the recently deceased owner of a robotics company, Ransom the Clown, Dolores, a computer programmer and niece of Chuck, and Dolores' father, Franklin. Of course, throughout the game, you will interact with each of these characters, and what is amazingly done also and a bit unique is that you control all of those characters as you play along Thimbleweed Park. This reminds a lot of the original Maniac Mansion, which was the first game that was created by Ron Gilbert. Ron Gilbert, of course, is the person behind the whole SCUMM engine that was used in the first 1990s, let's say, heyday of point-and-click adventure games, and especially those created by LucasArts. Now, Thimbleweed Park operates on the same principles of those early graphic adventure games in that the players navigate through various scenes from a third-person perspective using various verb commands to perform actions such as use, pick up, or talk to. Verb commands can be used to perform actions such as allowing a character to pick up an object into their inventory, use that objects with other ones available in their inventory, or talk with other characters in order to gain hints and trivia. Each one of the playable characters has their own inventory, and you can move objects from one to another to help you progress the plot. As you can see on screen, even though this game was created in the last couple of years, it follows the whole visual direction of the early LucasArts games. It has pixel artwork, and that was created by the team that made Thimbleweed Park using Photoshop mostly, as Ron Gilbert has revealed. Ron Gilbert also could not find a relevant video game engine that could support adventure games, so he had to create his own. Of course, he is very well experienced with such engines, as he was the developer of the original LucasArts SCUMM engine that we discussed earlier. The whole plot is amazing. It has a lot of twists and turns, and it is typical of the Ron Gilbert games. It is based heavily on the characters. It has a great character development as you progress through the story, and it does that through the eyes of multiple characters, which is amazing. It is a true case study for new game developers in order to understand how you develop characters across a plot line. As already mentioned, this game was the result of a successful Kickstarter campaign. It was released in 2017. It also has a limited physical version when we're talking about the Switch, but this is sold out everywhere, and it has a quite a high price in the secondary market. But other than that, you can purchase it from the Nintendo Switch online shop and enjoy it. And if you want to keep one suggestion from this video and you want to play one of the old school adventure games, then I suggest you play this one. It has a great story, great characters, and it is the result of two living legends of the genre. So everyone, this concludes our first video in our new series, where we are going to suggest on some point-and-click adventure games that you can enjoy on the Nintendo Switch. We have covered 5 different titles, 5 different series. Please have a look at them if you are a fan of the genre, or if you want to enter a new type of games. And please, if you like our content, follow the channel, subscribe and thumb up, as we have more content coming soon, and the second part in this video game series will be uploaded in the following days. Thank you all for watching.